Shalom, people. This is Brother Laos coming at you with another video, and I want to talk about the arguments in favor of integration and against integration from a child of integration. A lot of books and speeches were written about integration and the negative and positive effects of it. I'd like to give my grassroots understanding of the effects, both positive and negative, of integration, because I'm a child of it. I was born in 1965, so in 1970, I can remember me and my brother when we first started elementary school. We were bused out to the country to a place called Royal Hall Elementary School. We were among a handful of black children that were being integrated into Royal Hall Elementary School. And I can remember the long bus rides. I mean, it took a long time. We would fall asleep, wake up, the bus would still be going. I can remember when we took our class pictures, at least for me. My brother was a few years older than me, but I can remember that class picture. Well, I think I was the only black child in that picture. I wish my mom had held on to that picture. And the reason I remember it so well is because it was a show and tell day, something to that effect, and it was a little Caucasian girl in there that was from England. I remember she had a little English accent, and she said, "I'm from England." And I remember at the end of the show and tell, the teacher decided to give everybody a prize. She gave us a Kennedy $50. They used to have these 50-cent pieces. It had President Kennedy's head on. I remember that. But my mom, she didn't keep us there long. I think she understood, you know, hey, what's going to be the negative effects of my children being, you know, put through that. And so she pulled us out and put us into a private academy for maybe a few years, and then put us back into public school that was within the city limits of Winston. But like I said, I remember that, and I remember subsequent busing, which took us into the country, and they would always take us to the country. Very seldom were they taking us into the inner city, because the whole purpose of integration was get children better classrooms, better teachers per se, and better resources, books and libraries and all this stuff. And one of the things that I think, as I think back at it, you heard nothing about us as a people. It was all talking about the American way. And this is, to me, now that I look back at it, I learned about American history. I did. I learned about the part of history about them that showed them and showed this country in a great light, but never was anything stated about me. And see, this is the detriment that my generation had, is that this stuff was ingrained in us as children and later caused cognitive dissonance in us when sometimes our parents would try to tell us stuff about white people, and we said, but we learned this in school. So as I look back at it, I can't get mad at my parents, because they was only told by their black leaders what they needed to do with their child. If you want your child to get ahead, if you want your child to be able to function in this world, you need to integrate. You need to send them to these things, and you need to give them in these different academies, but to the detriment of what? Your mind. Your mindset was being set, that when you was told anything that you wasn't learning in that book, it caused cognitive dissonance, meaning you literally would get sick, because you would hear this stuff in school by the authorities that your parents told you to go to school, shut up, and listen and learn. But then when you came home, you heard your parents talk about racism and all this kind of stuff, and then you had to deal with when you was put on these buses, bussed out to some of these schools. Not always, because we came from the project, so it would be a lot of fights, but it was not uncommon sometimes to hear the N word. But most of the time, if you heard that, it was going to be a fight behind it. So, but still, for us to be immersed in that, and then come home and hear your parents talk about, man, the white man this and the white man that, it caused confusion. Because I'm like, well, tell me the right way. Tell me what is the right way. Well, see, you listen to this. Okay, well, you the one that sends me to the school. You telling me I'm listening to what the white man is saying, but you won't do something about it. And unfortunately, our people have always been people that wait for other people to make a way from them. That's not to say that every parent did that, because it was obviously it was some people back then that tried to start academies for black students so they could keep telling our story. But for the most part, my generation was immersed in American history, Revolutionary War, Betsy Ross, the fight against the British, and this stuff was instilled in us. But our parents also still kept their foot in the door, and didn't let the door get totally shut, where we would just buy into everything that we was learning in school. But still, sometimes we got enough of in us that some of us would turn out to be people like what's that guy named Armstrong Williams. It was enough to get some of us to turn into Candace Owens. It was enough to get some of us to turn into Ben Carsons. It was enough to get some of us to turn into what's the guy name? He's a preacher. If I say his name, you know who I'm talking about. Jesse Williams. Is it Jesse Williams? I think it's Jesse Williams. The Reverend Jesse Williams, the one that says that there is no racism, there is no police brutality, and so this was the this was the outcome of, for me, the integration is the cognitive dissonance that later on, I had to fight. Even though I seen, obviously I knew, it was racism in this nation. And obviously I knew that there was a difference between black people and white people, but still, it's something about when you put these teachers in front of you, and then the military. So many of us joined the military, and the military, has given us some benefits, but what integration, to me, to kind of, clear up some of the muddle of what I'm saying is, what integration to me was detrimental to us is that it gave us eyes of sympathy and understanding for their point of view, where there was no sympathy and there was no understanding for our point of view. So later on, when we would hear about the Black Panthers, or people like Nat Turner, they was rebellious, and we was made to fear learning about this stuff, even in the churches, even in the black churches, the white Jesus, always somebody talk about black Jesus, talk about anything that was against what the white seminarians had taught them, even though, momentarily sometimes preachers would stand up and say stuff, but for the most part, they taught one thing, but they did another. They sent they kids, they sent us to the institutions, and it was just like what Malcolm X stated. He said, what person would send their children to be educated by their oppressor, no matter how pro-black, no matter how pan-African or whatever you are? If you do that, you cutting your own throat. Because like I said, in some instances, even though I knew it was racism, I knew some of the things that happened to me, but still, I had some cognitive dissonance and stuff in me that had to be worked out over some years. Dealing with secular, religious, that had to be worked out in me. It had to be worked out because sitting in front of these classes, then when you go in the military, you learn about the great battles of the army, but then you're not really told about the Tuskegee Airmen. You're not really told about the Red Ball Express. You're not really told about the court martials and all this stuff that's done to soldiers. But then when you yourself get into it, because you were integrated into this, it's like their history is a part of you, and it's like you losing a part of you in order to get it out. And it really takes a lifetime because of this integration for us to get this stuff out. And this is the thing that I laugh at, today, with their argument about revisionism. It's not revisionism. What it was because our leaders were silly enough to integrate us into them, and they didn't teach us. They're saying it was not our fault that y'all don't know nothing about what y'all history is about. That's not our fault. So don't blame us. Blame yourself. But then, now as we have some of us that want to do it, it is so commonplace now that you are an anarchist or something like that to want to know about your true history. This is why you had that lady that did the 1619 project, and I didn't know she was a professor at UNC. She cannot get tenure because she is part of that 1619 project that wants to teach in schools the true history, or I say the full history of what America was about. Stuff, like I said, that when I was integrated into their schools, they just told me their side, but they didn't tell me. They told me about Francis Key Scott and the Star Spangled Banner, but they didn't tell me the fourth stanza was about what it was about the slaves that had ran to the side of the British to fight with the British. And they didn't say how that stanza was taken out later on when they wanted to make it the national anthem, because they said before it was just a song basically that people sang in a bar. They didn't want to talk about the many other slave rebellions besides that of Nat Turner, and also the how the slaves didn't just turn over on their bellies and let the slave masters just do whatever. It was many rebellions, but of course they wouldn't make that part of the history. So now the 1619 project wants to show that there is cognitive dissidence on their children's children that don't really want to give up that power. They really don't want to give up that power. They and to be truthful, some of our people don't want them to lose their power because they're going through cognitive dissonance themselves. They don't want to believe it. They don't want to believe it, or they believe it's true, but they don't want to. They don't want to believe that the white man will have to give up his power in order for them to get the true history. So they rather just leave things the way it is, and that's not the way we should be. But I know this is imperative upon all of us, and like I said, my parents did the best they could, but it's imperative. It would have been imperative upon my parents, if they was going to send us to these schools and integrated, that they would have kept us up on some of these things that they was going to leave out, but of course they didn't. No, and my parents, they did what they thought was right. They bought the little encyclopedias from the white man that had all the stories in there about the greatness of America and all this stuff. And it was other black people too that went on these payment programs for the Britannica encyclopedias and stuff that would just draw dust and all this other kind of stuff. Now, every now and then, though, you can find some different things that they might have hid in there that, if you read through it carefully, you might have seen something in our favor, but hardly. So, integration, I say it was some things that we definitely probably got that we might have not got if we would have stayed on ourselves. But overall, I think I wish that my parents' generation would have, tried. I wish they would have tried, and even if we might have not had everything that we needed or whatever, that I feel that, as I look back on integration and the stuff that I learned, I had to throw a lot of this stuff out of my mind that I learned growing up. I ain't talking about, how to read, how to write, and that kind of stuff. I'm not talking about that. But it was a lot of stuff. Man, it was a lot of stuff that they told us that was lies. And I had to put this stuff out of my mind and had to retrain my brain. Because just like Martin Luther King, and I didn't know about his burning house speech. We was never taught about that. His prophecy was true. He did integrate us into a burning house. So again, my parents did the best they could, and at the time. So I would just say, with my kids, I can understand a little bit more about this thing. Me and my wife was very Afrocentric. She made sure my kids knew a lot of stuff about, you know, their history and other things. And so, you know, that's all I wanted to say about integration. You know, some people say it was good because, you know, we did get into sports programs and different things that opened us up, but you know, now that it looks like we aren't going to get what we want, we don't have enough fight and gumption in us to rise up and restore ourselves and take the power back that we need in order to get up out of this place or carve out something of this place for ourselves. We don't have it in us, and that was because of integration, because we got parts of them in us that is going to be hard for us to shake until we can break free by the power of the Most High. So that's all I got to say. If you look at this video, leave a comment, like, share, be blessed.